college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm your host, Jon Buhler, lead writer for FanSided. As you can see, I am once again flying solo like a cup with Cody Williams, content director, fansided.com. Still across the pond. I think he ran his race with the NC State podcast. I saw he ate some reindeer hot dogs, pour one out for Rudolph a little bit. But before we begin, be sure to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, give this thing a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. Really helps the show grow. You can also pay us on Buzzsprout because, why not be a good Samaritan in this world? Again, this should be the last solo like a cup show for a minute. But knowing Cody, I may have to do another one or so. We'll get back here on the show. He's supposed to do one more with me before the end of June, and then I've got a really great idea for our July 4th of July episode. It's gonna really, if you want to go fast, that's what it's all about. If you want to go fast at an Applebee's, this is really what it's all about. So let's not beat around the bush too much here. Let's get rolling here today with our first and 15, which is Pat the Doc. Dusty May's departure from Michigan shows weakness within the Wolverines athletic program. In a way, it also shows strength going on at Duke. Again, I'm more on the Alabama and Duke beat there for the fan-sided NCAA division. But it was a huge shockwave there on Monday when Michigan head coach Dusty May decided to leave the men's basketball program to take over for the Dallas Mavericks. This is a guy who had just won a national championship at Michigan. He'd only been there a couple of years. It wasn't that long ago he was taking Florida Atlantic to the Final Four. Like I was still in this apartment when he took FAU to the Final Four. So I mean, Dusty May does have a bit of a reputation as a job hopper. But the other thing was Dallas, and I know this is a college football show, and I will get there. This is all about administration. So this you'll understand what I'm talking about here. When it comes to the Dallas Mavericks, they fired Jason Kidd, they're one of their former stars, done a lot of stuff with the organization, what have you, NBA legend. And then but they were one of two teams that had not hired a head coach, this late into the process in the NBA. The other was the Portland Trail Blazers. Their interim, former Spurs and Hawks player Tiago Splitter is now taking over in Chicago. So the Blazers got to figure that out. Also, I think they have the new owner, the guy, I'm blanking on his name. He owns the Carolina Hurricanes. They just won the Stanley Cup. So he's living his best life, I guess, without an NBA head coach. But yeah, I'm recording this in the morning before the NBA draft on Tuesday. This is how I can afford to do this right now. Again, this will be up here probably in about 48 hours. I don't think any of this is really going to change between now and then. If it does, well, I'll just laugh it off and we'll figure it out here. But yeah, with Dusty May leaving Michigan, and then Jon Scheyer, the Duke men's head coach, was tied to the Mavericks as well. They wanted him. They wanted him to coach his former player, Cooper Flagg, who could potentially be a top 10 player in the NBA for years to come. The allure of that is certainly there. I wouldn't rule it out, but also Jon Scheyer's at his alma mater. He played for Duke. He starred for Coach Krzyzewski. And then you're also kind of wondering, like, is this really the right time? He's got, 3 kids that are 8 and under? That's a lot. You do play some games on the road in college basketball, but it's not the grind of the NBA where you got to play 41. So maybe in time, maybe he will make the leap, but he has unfinished business here. Dusty May doesn't necessarily have that. But I think really the biggest thing here that I don't think people are talking enough about, it's not that Scheyer said no, because he probably did. It's more along the lines of, I don't think Dusty May wants to work with Warde Manuel. I think Warde Manuel has become incredibly toxic. This is a guy that wasn't even like communicative with Jim Harbaugh in the end. We obviously saw the Sharon Moore scandal happen, and he's out after 2 years. Kyle Whittingham comes in, mostly after he kind of got pushed out in Utah because they wanted to promote Morgan Scalley for some reason. But anyway, then also Michigan has like a new president. It's just an absolute mess right now. So I guess the Mavericks is a better gig than winning it all in Michigan again. Kind of makes you wonder what happens with other players, namely Elliot Cadeau, the guy who basically didn't enter the draft. Obviously, we've seen Yaxel Lindeborg, Ademara, and Morris Johnson Jr. They're all going to get drafted tonight. It'll be interesting to see where they all end up going. But Dusty May deciding to leave Michigan at this time just really really tempers my expectations for Michigan. Again, this is a team for college football and athletics. Well, it's all tied together because when your college football head coach's boss, when you've got some uncertainty around that, that's problematic. Like I understand Whittingham's going to be a good soldier and do whatever he is here. He'll be copacetic with Manuel or whoever else potentially replaces him. But this will have ripple effects for Michigan for a while. Dusty May was the best head coach they've ever had in basketball, like better than Steve Fisher, better than God anybody else. When you struggle to retain people, and I understand that the college game has become a little more professional. You got to deal with the portal. It's very hard to be a college coach in this day and age. Even in baseball and softball, it's a mess. But the more I think about it, I'm tending to. I don't think Michigan's going to make the playoff this year in college football. Not only is the schedule tough, but you're kind of dealing with this nonsense. At least, like maybe not necessarily in your office, but in like the adjacent office, or certainly on your floor. Um, this is going to put a lot of focus in here on Manuel to find a long-term solution. I think they're promoting a guy from within. This like the cycle. I understand why they're doing that to kind of save face, but like you just won a national championship and now it's an off year. And then I'll also be straight with you too. Like Michigan really doesn't know how to pick them. Like Jim Harbaugh's got some skeletons in his closet. Half of his, pretty much everybody outside of Chris Partridge was kind of a scumbag on his staff. We'll see what Jesse Minter does there with the Ravens and everything like that. And then obviously Dusty Madden's like this dude's the ultimate job hopper. And I mean, I've been working at FanSided for 11 years. I mean, for better or worse, that's what I've done. So I don't share that life experience of Dusty May here, but yeah, you could have stayed in Ann Arbor and been a legend. But obviously, if it was just so untenable with your boss, and this was like this opportunity it presented itself, and you were 1B to Jon Scheyer's 1A in the eyes of the Dallas Mavericks ownership group, then I can understand why you maybe want to make that move. Conversely, and I will probably write about this over the next couple of days for Ball Durham with Duke's administration. And I touched on this kind of with, Jay Batt leaving Kentucky, leaving Michigan State for Kentucky, and then Kevin Guskowitz on the way out of Michigan State to take over as the president at Clemson. This just kind of goes to show that like Duke just seems to have really good administration. I mean, Dr. Vincent Edward Price has been there for a decade. His athletic director, Nina King's been there for their better part of 20 years in some capacity. An easy choice to promote her from within. Once Kevin White retired in 21, I mean, Duke just won, the ACC championship in football, men's and women's basketball. They've had a good baseball team in the past. I think they either made the tournament or almost made it to Omaha 2 years ago. So I mean, they're figuring it out. And I just kind of wonder, like, maybe this will keep Manny Diaz in Durham for a little bit longer. I understand that potentially Florida State may want him. Florida State may also go bigger, may want to get somebody who's a little bit better recruiter, even though Manny Diaz, is an alum of FSU. We all know the Mike Norvell situation's cooked. That kind of goes without saying. But really here, like I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, like, man, maybe like can I really trust Michigan now? Excuse me. And then with Duke, I'm like, maybe they won't fall off a cliff. Maybe last year's ACC championship, wasn't like completely unprecedented. Like that's never gonna happen again. It might. Of course, got a bug in my throat when I'm doing Soul Like a Cup. This is how it goes. But I'm looking at this with May wanting to leave. Also, apparently there was the day of like him doing how do I say it? He had like the Dusty May basketball camp at Ann Arbor. That's going to piss off some boosters. That's going to piss off some alumni. I mean, that's going to hurt some people. I mean, I wonder what Dave Portnoy is feeling about this. There's other guys out there too. Maybe Larry Ellison or whoever has really strong Michigan ties. But Scheyer could have left. It would seem like the Mavericks want to give him every opportunity to take this job, and he didn't do it. He'd rather stay. I think the time in his life to do that, to make that move, is not right now. Maybe at one point down the line, he will make that jump to the NBA. Coach K never did. That doesn't matter. But Michigan, like I view even less, which is kind of shocking because I don't really have a whole hell of a lot of respect for them. And we'll see if we respect Michigan here on this next topic here. We're going to move on to our next topic here with some Goldilocks. The ticker is working right now, or the timestamps. EA Sports essentially power ranked the 20 toughest stadiums in college football today. And this is going to be in college football 27. So I'm going to put four teams that I think are ranked too hot, too cold, and just right. And I will rattle off the top 20 and go from there. At number one, you've got Tiger Stadium at LSU. Two, you got Ohio Stadium for Ohio State. Three, Beaver Stadium for Penn State. Four, Sanford Stadium for Georgia. Five, Bryant-Denny Stadium for Alabama. Six, Autzen Stadium for Oregon. Seven, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium for Florida. Eight, Neyland Stadium for Tennessee. Nine, Memorial Stadium for Clemson. 10, Kyle Field for Texas A&M. And then 11 through 20, you got Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium for Oklahoma. Michigan Stadium for Michigan at 12. Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium at 13 for Texas. 14, you got Jordan-Hare Stadium for Auburn. 15, you got Husky Stadium for Washington. 16, you got Williams-Brice Stadium for South Carolina. 17, you got Memorial Stadium for Indiana. 18, you got Rice-Eccles Stadium for Utah. 19, you got Kinnick Stadium for Iowa. And 20, you got Notre Dame Stadium for Notre Dame. So yeah, a lot to unpack here. I'm gonna start with who we're too hot on. These are all in the top 10, so be warned. I think LSU at one's too hot right now. It's living on past reputation. Death Valley is known as Death Valley for a reason, but both schools that have Death Valley, that have played last year for the Battle of Death Valley, will play this year with LSU and Clemson. You can win games on the road at those places. I think LSU was such a hard place to play when I was in college, basically, Nick Saban era and, up into the better part of Les Miles' tenure. Under Coach O, not so much outside of the 2019 year. 2018, LSU was pretty good. They would have made the playoff had that been a 12-team format at that point. But I understand it's incredibly loud. I understand it's a tremendous night game. And I've read about this last fall for Dawn of the Dog, and LSU keeps getting the benefit of the doubt. Again, it's living on past reputation. They keep giving the Tigers a bunch of night games. And what ends up happening is they end up getting sacked like Jaden Daniels behind me. That's how that goes. So I'm comfortable with them being in the top 10. I'm okay with them being in the top five, but right now I don't think they've earned the number one spot. Another team that I think is too hot on is Penn State at number three at Beaver Stadium. I think that's the most overrated college football stadium in the country in terms of crowd noise. They talk about the white out like it's God's gift to God's gift to the green earth, whatever it is. I'm blanking on that. The point is, like, they're trying to hype it up like it's an SEC environment. It's not, and it doesn't matter. Like, Ohio State comes in there and they still lose. I mean, if they were so good, they wouldn't have fired James Franklin 6 games after making it to a national semifinal. It's a big stadium. It's a tough stadium to play in. It's a different sort of thing because it's in a very rural part of Pennsylvania. But you can win there. And I don't think that I don't necessarily think that teams that go into Happy Valley are really that terrified anymore. A lot, but like there's going to be one team on the schedule every year that's going to go in there and give them a game, possibly might beat them. So I can't have somebody in the top five with that kind of vibe. Like when you see like, oh, we got to play at Beaver Stadium, that's an L for us. That's not always the case here. I wouldn't have them in the top 10. I'd probably have it 15. Just so grossly overrated. Next up, I've got Tennessee at eight being too hot. Again, it's the same sort of thing. It looks really cool. It's kind of like Tiger Stadium, where it's kind of a funnel. The crowd noise amplifies. The field tries to kill you. The grass there in Neyland is unforgiving. Thing will rip sinew like a popsicle stick. But you can go into Knoxville and win games. More importantly, you can go up early on the Vols and take the crowd completely out of the game. Again, I think that's the most overrated road environment in the SEC by a considerable margin. I have it probably a few spots lower, maybe like 13 or 15, but like I'd have it ahead of Beaver Stadium. I think that that's living on past reputation. Like, oh, we can check our Neyland. Like that doesn't do anything. Like Georgia goes in there and wins. I mean, Florida wins. Alabama wins. Even though Alabama's had a little bit of struggles of late in Neyland, they would win there all the time. Like it's again, it's living on past reputation and kind of a flimsy one. Like it used to be really great and really tough to play in the 90s, but this is the 2020s, almost 2030s here. Massively overrated. And then the last one I think is too hot is Kyle Field at number 10. Kind of a similar sort of thing. Again, we're talking about for the last three are all massive stadiums, all probably over 100,000 people. But I don't think anybody like if this was such a tough home environment, then why did you score 3 points and lose to Miami in your first home playoff game? If it was that tough, your fan base is that jacked up to be here. I understand, like, you got the 12th man, you got everything kind of going for you along those lines. But I think when you're putting your players into battle, they're not always prepared. And even if Mike Elko's telling them how to do everything, it's just the A&M of it all, the Oregon of the SEC, where just you're attracting the wrong players, guys that aren't necessarily foxhole guys. It may be a tough place to play. I mean, granted, Georgia's never played there. I mean, Lionel Messi's played there more recently than Georgia. That's all you really need to know. But not terribly overrated, but I don't know if it's a top 10 place. So yeah, I think right now, I think LSU, I think Penn State, Tennessee, and A&M are overrated home environments. Ones that are too cold. The Big House at 12. I know I talked a lot of smack in the first segment about Michigan, but I think when you play in the Big House, there's a little bit more energy. Granted, we've seen the Wolverines play pretty well, particularly the last 3 years of the Jim Harbaugh era. That's still fresh in your mind. I do kind of feel that even when Michigan's not up to snuff, I feel when they play there, it gives them a little bit more of a puncher's chance than expected. I mean, but they beat Indiana a couple years ago. Or did they beat Indiana? I don't remember. They kept it interesting with Indiana and Ohio State. Like they'll play good there. They'll take care of business amongst teams that matter. They won't always win every game, but I think particularly when the weather changes, Michigan's built to play in those conditions. And I think just the way that the stadium is, it kind of fits it like hand in glove. So, it is a spectacle. And when the Wolverines are playing there, obviously I try not to watch very much Big Noon Saturday because I can't stand Gus Johnson, but I'll turn the sound off and watch that. It's okay. But yeah, I'd have that in the top 10 for sure. I think at number 14, I got Jordan Hare at Auburn. That's better too. Look, I understand Auburn's not really been any good for the last half decade or so, but when Auburn's good, Jordan Hare's different. The environment, again, it's a mid-sized SEC stadium. It's not the best environment, but like the fans stay there and they don't leave. And I think when the team's halfway decent, the crowd fires them up in the fourth quarter to make big plays, to make a difference. And that's when, you're Georgia or you're Auburn and you lose at Jordan Hare. And you have bad memories like kick six or prayer Jordan Hare. Um, there have been times where, particularly when Georgia and Alabama play there, Auburn's two biggest rivals, they're like, okay, Auburn may not win all those games, they may lose them, but it's not going to be a cakewalk. You don't see Georgia going in there winning 55 to 10. You don't see Alabama going in there winning 44 to 17. They may occasionally do that, but when they do win, Auburn makes it incredibly close or they pull off an upset. Again, maybe I'm showing my age here, but when I was in school and a little bit after that in my 20s, like yeah, like Jordan Hare was legit, and that should be higher than some of these other ones as well. Next up that I think is underrated is Williams-Brice Stadium at South Carolina. Again, another team who kind of ebbs and flows in terms of how good they are on the field. Again, as a Georgia fan, I hate seeing the dogs go there. It's hot. There's roosters crowing. Gamecocks don't care for Georgia fans and vice versa. It can be a little testy. I think if you're Florida, if you're Kentucky, if you're South Carolina or South Carolina, if you're Mizzou, Tennessee, when you kind of go into Williams-Brice, even if the Gamecocks, I mean, heck, even Alabama's kind of seen that of late. When you go into that stadium and you play them, it's very similar to Auburn, where like that gives South Carolina a little bit more of an edge than they probably deserve. They've won a lot of games there over the years. It doesn't have the football program does not have the rich tradition of Auburn, But there are certainly times where when you go into that stadium or you watch a game being played there, and you got Sandstorm playing. I mean, I hate that song, but it's a vibe, and that energy permeates through the crowd, the coaching staff, and the players, and it makes it very difficult for the opponent. So I don't necessarily think that some of these other places that are listed above really offer that. I think Williams-Brice is incredibly underrated. I'd personally have in the top 10. I don't necessarily know if I'd move a lot of other teams down there, but I think it's a good one. And then the fourth one on here, I ended up going with Rice-Eccles Stadium for Utah. Very underrated. Again, this is a program in a school and a stadium where like, okay, it's really kind of come into the national consciousness under Kyle Whittingham. Utah wasn't really anything to write home about before, Urban Meyer took over. And then obviously Kyle Whittingham stayed and made that, a regional power for 20 plus years. Now he's at Michigan. We'll see what Morgan Scalley can do. You are playing at altitude. They pack that stadium. It's the same sort of thing, with BYU at Provo and everything like that. Crowd's always into it. Crowd's always energetic. But again, like you can go into Rice Eccles and win. But I would also say like there are factors with this stadium that I think it's underrated because it's just not as big of a name. If this would have been around, if Utah would have been in the public consciousness for maybe a generation prior to this, then maybe it'd be higher up. But I mean, I wouldn't want to be playing Rice Eccles if I had to. If I was on the Big 12 schedule, that's tough. I mean, honestly, if Utah kind of finds its level and does really good things there in the Big 12 now, that could be good for them. And then as far as ones where I think they're just right, I'm good with Ohio State at 2. I'm good with Georgia at 4, Oregon at 6, and Clemson at 9. Like when you go into the horseshoe, the Buckeyes are probably going to win most of their games. They may occasionally lose. It's always going to be to a rival. It's going to be close. But when you think about college football Saturdays, that's one of the first stadiums I think about. You got the nickname, the horseshoe, just like, the Big House or Death Valley or anything else out there. I think that Ohio State's one of the best programs in the country right now. And again, like I'm not an Ohio State fan. I'm just seeing it from like this vantage point that what they're doing right now is really good. I think that they've earned the right to be number one more so than LSU at this point. They like, again, they will occasionally lose a game at home, but when's Ohio State ever bad? LSU's been bad. I think Ohio State's comfortably inside the top 3. I'm okay with that. Georgia at 4. And I don't think that they should be higher than that. I think the highest you could probably put them is 3. And the reason for this is like, again, it's very difficult to win between the edges. I think there's been 2 losses. You lost to Alabama, what, last year or 2 years ago? Yeah, last year. And then the last time you lost at home was in double overtime to what? South Carolina. Again, rivals. It's a big stadium. You got the hedges. The football team's really good. They're really well coached. There are occasionally times where opponents will come in there and mess with them. Georgia Tech, namely, they always play really really well up in Athens. I think the thing that hurts Georgia more so than anything, excuse me, is up until like 2021, all of the school's like best moments for the most part, like the stuff that lives in Georgia football lore, either happened in Jacksonville, a bowl game, or on the road. Like very few things. Maybe what Kevin Butler's game-winning kick versus Clemson was at home. I mean, Hobnail Boot was on the road. Uh, Trying to think of what Herschel, Lindsey Scott was in Jacksonville. Herschel versus the point is there's so many other moments that have happened for Georgia football that are fantastic away from Sanford Stadium. So people kind of forget about this. But you ask teams like, Auburn. Auburn doesn't win here. Auburn hasn't won here since the Bush administration. Which one? Doesn't matter. Alabama does have Georgia's number for the most part. They beat them twice since I've been a fan. Um, Both to win championships, one to win national, one to win SEC, and this is false start. But I don't know, like it's a little bit. It's gone up because of the winning streak that they had from 1925. So like that's really played a part in that. Autzen Stadium, again, I'm not a big Oregon fan at all, but I do think that like for as small as Autzen Stadium is, how it's built into the ground, how crazy that fan base is, I think it does add to the elements there. I also think the team's well coached. They recruit a lot of great players to play at a high level. I think a lot of times the teams that come in to play them aren't of their quality. And then also you got to deal with liquid sunshine. And I think having to play a really good team in adverse conditions sometimes could be problematic. So yeah, I'm comfortable with Autzen being high up. And then what Death Valley there in Clemson, even though like it should have been higher because recently, because Clemson was doing so well, they pulled back a little bit. You can win on the road in Clemson, but it's a very daunting place to play. When they run down the hill and they touch Howard's Rock, that's a spectacle. But it's been depreciated a little bit, and I think a number nine for them is totally fair. So that's what I got right there for this for Goldilocks. And on that note, let's move on to our third segment of the day with You Missed Your Mark. Paul Finebaum declares he don't care no more about Texas Tech football. This frog in my throat's not going to go. I'm so sorry, guys. So he did his radio hit on Monday with McElroy and Kubelik in the morning in Birmingham. And I think he talked about like how he doesn't care about Texas Tech anymore. He said, I think most, if not all of us, should take a big deep breath and say, thankfully, it's over. Not because it's Texas Tech, a school I really don't care about, but for college football, it was a bad look for the game, and I think most people reacted accordingly. I love that. This is a program that had prior to this past year, the last time they won double-digit games was in '08. I mean, that was with like Mike Leach and Graham Harrell and Michael Crabtree in this false start. I think when you have somebody who's new money or a newcomer to the table that's really annoying and really pisses people off, and more importantly, they do things that undermine the sanctity of the sport or whatever you're doing, people will quickly turn on you because you are an outsider. You're a disruptor, but you're a disruptor in a way that doesn't really generate anything positive. Look, maybe Texas Tech will be a playoff caliber team with Will Hammond at quarterback. I think every team in the Big 12 absolutely hates them. They've become, persona non grata. They've become public enemy number one. And I don't think that like a team that's a like hell, LeBron James really struggles being the villain. Like it's very tough to ask somebody to wear a black hat. And even though, the Red Raiders do wear like the black hat and Matador, they look kind of like the Lone Ranger a little bit. Like just because they wear it doesn't mean that they're about that. So yeah, as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it, like I can't really in good faith put the Red Raiders into the playoff field. They'll be close. They'll be a top four team probably in the Big 12. But I like BYU's upward trajectory a lot more. I think Arizona State could have a bounce back year. Utah could be pretty good. Arizona's going to be fine. And we'll see what happens with the Baylors and the TCUs of the world. Houston as well. It's not going to be Iowa State. I'll touch on them a little bit later. But the more I sit here and the more I think about it, like Feinbaum's right. Like the whole thing with Texas Tech, particularly with Sorsby, the fact that they could think they could get like a local judge to say, yeah, we're just gonna let them be eligible to play with our, kangaroo court of nonsense. Like I built my career around this sport, and I don't want to see somebody kind of come in here and make a mockery of it. And that's kind of what they did. And Feinbaum's been around for a very long time. He covered Paul Bear Bryant when in the very early '80s before he passed, coming over from Tennessee and out of the University of Tennessee and everything. But like outside of the '08 season of last year, when's Texas Tech really been worth a damn? They've had a couple of other years where like they're okay. They're okay. I mean, they also had Patrick Mahomes play for them, which I think adds to them to a certain level of the public consciousness, if you will. But to be straight with you, it's not, they earned their seat at the table a year ago, and then they're not going to be invited back to the party. Like those seats are kind of reserved for people that are, more or less going to expect it to be there. There's also a newcomer out there, Indiana. They've earned it. They've earned it time and time again. Oregon kept earning it. They've earned their spot. And you got Georgia and Ohio State have made the playoff both of the last 2 years. You got other teams that have made it a couple, at least once in the last 2 years. Whether that's Texas, whether that's Miami, whether that's Tennessee, Oklahoma. I don't know. Ole Miss had earned their spot there too. Penn State, like a little bit more like we're like Texas Tech, huh? Whatever. I understand the Big 12 is going to probably have some guy, the Dragon meme of the week, if you will, if you're Cody Williams. But I don't know. It's a very interesting dichotomy here, and I'm kind of glad that Finebaum is like, you know what? I don't need this anymore. I don't need this. I don't need this in my life. And again, like logic prevailed. And I will say this: we do live in a world where logic doesn't prevail very often. We live in a very interesting times. But I do like it where when we're in an increasingly fractured society, where people will at some point come together and be like, you know what, enough's enough. We can't do this. And everyone's like, no, we're not gonna let Borden Sorsby play for the Red Raiders because he's gambling on games his teams are playing in. Like Pete Rose didn't get to go to the Hall of Fame as the hit king for that reason. Obviously, he's passed on right now, and he may never get there. He may be forever outside like Shoeless Joe Jackson. There's no real fight to get him in there. But I don't think that Texas Tech, maybe they'll regroup, maybe they'll come back from this. Maybe Cody Campbell will funnel even more money in, but like they embarrassed themselves. I think that they hurt their reputation more so than any other program in college athletics over the last 2 months. And it's not close. And when you make great strides to improve your reputation, if you're like to rip it away that quickly, I mean, just kind of shows, your 15 minutes of fame's up in some ways. That may not entirely be the case with Texas Tech, but I'm not banking on being back in the playoff. And honestly, you know what? You shouldn't either. So let's move on to our second half of our show with our fourth topic of the day with some do Host or do Host. Writing a lot for Alabama and came across this article. Didn't end up writing it for Bama Hammer, but I think it's worth discussing. Do Host or do Host? Is Kalen DeBoer's unique recruiting plan going to work for Alabama in the end? And what this recruiting plan is he's kind of going after his kind of guys. He's going with a smaller recruiting class. And for the second time in 3 years, it doesn't look like he's going to get a top 10 player in state to commit to the Crimson Tide. So is that going to work out? I, it's go back and forth on this. I'm going to say do Host 1S, it will work out just for the sake of being positive, but with one caveat. It will work out because he's getting his type of players. He's building his program the way that he wants to, and he's won pretty much everywhere he's been. And I'm okay with that. And there's also a notion that like maybe Alabama is not producing the best high-end talent in state. I mean, it's got fertile recruiting soil, but maybe not to the degree of other states such as Florida, Texas, California, Georgia. There's other ones out there too. Alabama is usually right in that next level of teams, and it just doesn't seem to be right there. So it's Stu Hoffman. Like, okay, maybe you're just getting the best players you can, regardless. Maybe you're getting less, but you're getting quality over quantity. I will say that the one thing that unravels this is if those players end up going to Auburn and Auburn turns it around pretty quickly, that ain't good look for you, man. We'll see what happens under Alex Golish. We'll see how what Auburn does moving forward. And look, what you have to remember is when you are the flagship university in your state, and you're at a traditional power, whatever sport you are. Boys and girls like dream to go play for your team with whatever it is. If you're the like North Carolina basketball, if you grew up in Wilmington, the same hometown of Michael Jordan, and you want to go play for the Tar Heels and they overlook you, maybe you'll go play for state and really rub it in their face. That's kind of the same thing here with Alabama. Oh, Alabama is not really showing interest. Auburn wants me to be there. Well, I guess I'm gonna go to Auburn. And this is kind of like you don't need to allow the little brother school in your state to creep into your territory to gain some momentum because you're falling asleep at the wheel. And I guess Colin Cowherd had this segment a couple of years ago, back when I listened to the show. It stuck with me. Well, I think there's like four schools where they have just major little brother complexes in their state: Auburn, Oklahoma State, Michigan State, and I believe he said UCLA. I could be wrong, but those are like the four schools where like, man, A&M maybe a little bit too. And then the North Carolina Duke thing, that's a whole weird separate entity there. But Auburn's certainly one of them. The difference is Auburn, you can actually win a national championship at. I would attest that Auburn's the worst place in the country you can win a national championship at. Goal is just aspiring to do that. Maybe he will. Probably won't, but maybe he will. I'm more of the belief that DeBoer is going to win a national championship, but I'm also of the belief that it's going to probably be more of the Gene Stallings singular variety. He's not going to repeat. Frankly, I don't think anybody in college football is going to repeat anymore. Georgia was your last repeat champion. Maybe Indiana will make me eat some crow on that, but I don't see that happening. And I guess to really kind of tie a bow on this segment before I move on, is it's got to work out for DeBoer because there are things working in Alabama's favor this year that serves them. The schedule's not terribly hard. Your two toughest games are at home versus Georgia and A&M. Assuming you split one of them, you can afford to lose on the road at LSU in a night game. You can beat Tennessee, you'll go 10 and 2, you'll make the playoff. Maybe you need to do a little bit better than that. You've got a really great secondary. You got some skilled position players that are interesting. Um, you were able to retain your coordinators, who I think highly of, with it being Ryan Grubb on offense, and then your co-coordinators of Kane Womack and Maurice Linguist on defense. But you got to be able to run the football with conviction. You got to get good. You got to get good quarterback play, and your offensive line can't be a wet paper bag. So there's a lot of things kind of working against Alabama in some ways too. But I will say this, like DeBoer's a good coach. DeBoer can recruit. DeBoer can develop. DeBoer can do a lot of things. There's a lot of things that he does, and I think he's a guy of integrity. I think he's a guy that, like Greg Byrne, felt comfortable sticking his neck out for to bring in here. And I think Nick Saban's been very supportive of him throughout this process. I think he knows replacing himself, the greatest of all time, is not going to be easy. A very different situation. I mean, Bear Bryant passed away shortly thereafter he was done. Then Ray Perkins came over and wasn't quite the same. And you had the really good Gene Stallings here, but it was a lot of Dennis Franchione's and Mike Shula's in between Bryant and Saban. DeBoer's in a different spot. I think he can make it work here, but like he's not really giving himself much margin for error here. And I think when you're in a league where there's not much margin for error, you can't give yourself less. You got to thread that needle. How confident are you that you're going to do it the first time? And on that note, let's get on to our penultimate topic with some 4 for 4. Haven't done this in a bit. Wanted to kind of round out this show a little bit with some thoughts. This kind of ties into it's 4 for 4, definitely maybe. This kind of ties into the Big Ten deep dive that Bill Connolly did for ESPN.com. Kind of like, okay, did that exercise kind of change my opinion of what's going on in that league? Maybe a little bit, maybe not a lot, but certainly a little, but certainly some. So because Cody's not on here, I only get to talk about each of these teams for one team per segment. So definitely maybe a team that definitely maybe might be good in the ACC. Right now, I'm kind of leaning Cal. I go back and forth on this. I do think that they've kind of assimilated into the ACC a lot better than expected. Like that, like the dog said that likes to burrow. First time she was really quiet, and then we realized, oh, she was just not feeling so good. She's got a lot of personality. That's kind of Cal right now. You got JKS at quarterback. He's a mega talent. You got Tosh Lupoi taking over at his alma mater. Justin Wilcox will never get the credit he deserves for keeping this thing on the rails for as long as he did. And you've had good players. I mean, Fernando Mendoza played there. Jaden Zach Ott played there too. Cal has shown that it can punch up and it can hang with some of the best teams in the ACC. Can they do this consistently week over week? I don't know. But like, if Duke won the ACC a year ago, I'm not ruling out Cal. I think Cal has a non-zero chance to potentially do that. The thing is, Miami is going to have to hurt itself along the way. And then, other teams that are seriously vying for it, like SMU and Louisville, may not have to be up to snuff. So if you're kind of looking in that third or fourth tier of teams, keep an eye on Cal. As far as the Big Ten is concerned, the team that I'm kind of going back to, and this is the one that maybe I didn't express enough on the previous episode when I had some Big Ten energy, I'm going to go with the Washington Huskies. It's not just me saying that they have the 15th hardest stadium in the country. I think DeMond Williams is really talented. More importantly, I think Jed Fish is a really good head coach. And on that note, like He's not taking over at Florida. That job was potentially they gave it to John Summerall. Obviously, Jed Fish probably would have loved the opportunity to be the head coach at Florida. I mean, he was roommates with Howie Roseman in the 90s, being on the support staff during what Steve Spurrier's run. I think they were, I think Roseman and Fish were fraternity brothers. Like he's a Florida dude. I mean, he wears a visor in the rain up there in Seattle. But we saw him win at a very high level at Arizona. He won a lot of games last year at Washington. The transition's been a little difficult. What it was Pat Chun, I think, is the AD come over from Wazoo. They've had some turnover, with Troy Dannon spending 5 months there, with Jim Cohen taking over at USC and then him eventually going to Nebraska. They've got a little more stability here. And you got to replace DeBoer. That wasn't going to be easy. I think with things being a little bit more settled, okay, this is another year that we're going to be in the Big Ten. We got a quarterback. He's going to be here. We got a head coach that's going to be here. And I think some of that level of stability for the Huskies will help them. I don't necessarily know if their highest of highs are going to be better than what USC's highest of highs are. I think they could do better than Michigan. I think all the credit and the hype that we're giving Penn State, maybe we should be giving that more to UW potentially. And even though I'm not really high in Iowa, maybe I should be a little bit higher on them. I think Washington's is a good team to kind of keep your eye on there for a little bit. So yeah, that's my team for the Big Ten. For the Big 12, the team that I think definitely maybe might be good. How about the Oklahoma State Cowboys? This isn't like a hard one. Like they could go worst to first, like Arizona State did a couple of years ago. Because you effectively got Eric Morris, Caleb Hawkins, I think that's his name, Drew Mestamaker and Wyatt Young all coming over from North Texas. You wonder, is North Texas players playing in the Big 12 going to be good enough to make Oklahoma State what it was? Well, frankly, anything is better than what Oklahoma State was the last 2 years. Absolute tire fire under Mike Gundy. Hasn't been the same program since losing the Big 12 championship to Texas 3 years ago. I think that they're going to be a bowl. They're going to be a bowl team. They're going to win some games. They're going to have some say in what happens in the Big 12. Now, for me to think that they're going to win 10 games, that's a bit much. Like for that to happen, Maker's got to be a Heisman finalist. I'm not ruling that out, but I'm also under the impression that like this team's a little flawed. I understand that Hawkins came over to be part of, I'm going to make sure that's actually right, his name. Caleb Hawkins. Yeah, Caleb Hawkins is the running back. He came over from North Texas. When they were playing Tulane, for the American Championship, for the right to go to the college football playoff, it was rainy. They kept throwing it because they didn't feel comfortable running the ball. And maybe that'll work in the Big 12, but at some point, like if you can run the football really well in that conference, I think you can dictate terms. There's not much separating 1 to 16 in that league. But if you've got a galvanizing presence and you've got like a three-headed monster on offense, with Mestamaker, Hawkins, and Young, like that's substantial. Eric Morris is proving to be a very strong head coach, but I'm bullish on them. But I think maybe 2027 is the year that we see the Pokes potentially get to Arlington and win the Big 12 and make the playoff. But they will be better because, well, frankly, they have to be. And then the SEC team that I got on here is the Missouri Tigers. The Missouri Tigers, the North Carolina State Wolfpack of the SEC. They're a team that when you expect them to be good, they disappoint. When you're not expecting anything out of them, they overdeliver. I think the fact that Eli Drinkwitz has not taken another job, I think the fact that Auburn didn't hire him, I think the fact that Florida didn't hire him, I think that there's other. I think Penn State was the one who probably showed the most palpable interest in him. The fact that he's still here leads me to believe that maybe they're building something good. I think that they kind of had to flush out the nonsense of the Luther Burden era, and that's going to take some time. You do have Ahmad Hardy. I know he had a very scary incident happen to him this offseason, but I think that if they can run the football and they've got a top two running back at the conference alongside Quan Lacey at Ole Miss, that's going to be huge for them. They usually have a good defensive line. Quarterback plays usually halfway decent. I think losing Bo Pribula to Virginia, that's not great. But I think Mizzou's There's a little bit about them. I'm not saying they're gonna have like a Vanderbilt type of season where like they're gonna go 10-2 and just miss the playoff, but I'm not I'm not ruling that out. I think Mizzou, because more importantly, I didn't want to put Florida and Auburn on here. I didn't want to have like the Oklahoma State equivalent here in the SEC. I wanted a team that I feel like has a little bit more stability. And with Mizzou, like with the continuity and stability, it's just time. Like they fluctuate so much, but the fact that this is still here, it's kind of like Washington a little bit. I think Washington's got a chance to be a better team than Mizzou, but they're kind of cut from that same sort of cloth. So yeah, teams like Cal, Washington, Oklahoma State, and Missouri definitely maybe might be good. And on that note, let's get out of here with our last topic with some good bowl. Congratulations, Iowa State Cyclones fans. You can now purchase alcohol at games being played at Jack Trice Stadium in Hilton Coliseum. I wish they could be bought at baseball stadium, but you don't have one. This is Jamie Pollard's effort to kind of recoup some revenue. Look, your football team's not going to be good. The bulk of your players have gone to Penn State to play for Matt Campbell. Your basketball team's amazing. Although you did lose Milan Momcilovic to Kentucky, you still have TJ Otzelberger as your head coach. The clones may be very, very good on the hardwood, but I think for a team in the Big 12 that's coming off a really great run under an iconic coach for them, where they're going to pull back. Again, Iowa State's kind of historically been a really good basketball school. Football, not so much. But just to kind of find ways to increase revenue will help them. And maybe they were a late comer to this, but better late than never. I think I don't know. Maybe it'll make the home environments a little more raucous there at Hilton Coliseum. Maybe some degree at Jack Trice as well. But I think you got to give Jimmy Rogers a chance. I think Jimmy Rogers is a really good coach. I think he's going to a very tough situation. I mean, he's only 2 years away from coaching at South Dakota State. He spent last year at Washington State in the wake of Jake Dickert. And I don't know, I guess Kirby Moore's there now. I'm trying to remember everybody where they're at. But look, Jane Paul, he's trying, Jennifer. He's trying to figure this out. He's trying to keep it going because, like, look, man, my guy Matt Campbell left. Obviously, we talked about him on the news where he basically crashed out about a month ago over the college sports commission about how the SEC and the Big Ten won't play by the ACC and Big 12's rules. Like, of course they're not going to. But this kind of like the last sort of thought I've kind of got about this before I get out of here. I think Jamie Pollard's potentially gearing himself up for another opportunity. He's done great things there in Ames. He's done great things leading Iowa State. And you've seen guys out there become ADs across the board. Like, I'm not saying he's going to go to Michigan State. Maybe he will. We'll see what happens. But like, Jay Batt's been a job hopper. Troy Dannon, we talked about in the show, has been a job hopper as well. Um, the other athletic departments are going to step up. I mean, I think what Mike Babinski is retiring at Purdue. Dan Radakovich is on the way out there at Miami. Mitch Barnhart's leaving Kentucky, but he's been replaced by Jay Batt. Warde Manuel, we talked about that at the top of the hour with the show, where he's like not doing so great there at Michigan. People out there that are good, that are doing less, that are doing more at lesser jobs. Like Jamie Pollard, like Nina King there at Duke. Other people may want to see what they're about. I don't think King will leave because Duke's a tremendous power in basketball, and she's been there for a long time. But I don't I don't think Pollard's going to be in this role at Iowa State for more than 2 years. I think there's going to be another opportunity that opens up. Hell, if Michael Alford just stinks, he goes to FSU, he galvanizes that, and I think that could be a really good opportunity. Grant, I think Jamie Pollard is trying to get his name out there, get his brand going in terms of, being a high-end athletic director. He's done great things at Iowa State. But I kind of wonder, like, has he outgrown this? Is he a big fish in a small pond? And again, alcohol sales, maybe this is something that was controversial within the university, within the fan base, what have you. But like, hey, we got to be we got to try to like keep pace with the people that are trying to make revenue here because we're the state school in Iowa. Like, remember that we're not the flagship. We're not the flagship at a major state. So we got to make do with what we can do. And I applaud Iowa State for being creative, for really trying. And I think when you have success at a place like Iowa State, no matter what role it is, no matter whether you're a football coach, basketball coach, athletic director, player, I think it helps you for life and whatever comes next because you've had to grind. You've had to, play with like your hand tied behind your back, and you just make it work. Why do you think we hold Seneca Wallace in such high regard in the annals of college football history? Why do you think I loved me some Kelechi Assembly so much when he played for the Raiders? The mayor, Fred Hoiberg, doing unbelievable things there in Nebraska. He cut his teeth here in his hometown of Ames, Iowa. And obviously, I think Matt Campbell's destined to do great things there at Penn State. Jamie Pollard too. And I wish it wasn't the case that Iowa State was just going to be like a stepping stone for some of the people. And I think the worst part is like I think with Pollard and Campbell, they were proving that you didn't have to do that. But obviously, we've kind of seen at times that maybe that's the direction it goes in. And on that note, let's get out of here because this was episode 285 of False Start. You can follow me, Jon Buhler, on Twitter at X at Buhler118. You can follow my absent-minded, absent co-host, Cody Williams at the Sizzle20. You can follow along with the show on I was doing so good. You can follow along with the show on Twitter or the X at CFE False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Anywhere there's podcasts, give us a 5-star review. Really helps the show grow. Please pay us on Buzzsprout. Groceries aren't cheap. And again, like this should be the last show I'm doing this solo like a cup. Cody will hopefully will be on the show for this weekend for Monday's episode. Maybe that'll come out on Tuesday. I think he's flying across the pond. We'll see where he is. He's still on vacation right now. I think he comes back officially on Thursday, but we'll see what happens here. I'll reach out to him. We're gonna have a fun show when he comes back. He's gonna tell me all about Norway, and I think I got a fun Fourth of July themed episode planned as well. So that's probably going to be our next two ones that we do on this program. Looking forward to it. Once again, thanks for listening, and this is False Start.